Welcome to the Yankee Cowboy Podcast, coming to you from Dallas, Texas. Here's your host, Tim Wilkins.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another great episode of the Yankee Cowboy Podcast. I'm joined by the co-host of co-hosts, Chris, joining me once again. And today's topic is boo-hoo, Denny Hamlin won at Pocono. That's the controversy of the matter. And Chris, thank you for joining me. But today's episode, we had a few days to, I guess you could say, ravel in the pain and suffering of a Denny Hamlin win. But I just think that I don't have enough respect for Denny Hamlin, so it's I get it. He's a good race car driver, but he's as I like to call, a resident douche canoe. So like to see. I mean, obviously, Pocono is a tough track, Chris. I think you and I both agree on that one. Pocono is not an easy race. A tricky 3 turns. Each turn is not the same as the other one. But let me hear your thoughts on it before we kind of dive into it here a little bit. I mean, I have some thoughts on it, but I don't want to sit on my soapbox all afternoon.
Yeah, Tim. I mean, I think I think it was definitely an interesting race. First of all, one of the biggest things I'll say is what a crowd there they had for the Pocono race. The last few years they've gone down to 1 race as opposed to the normal 2, and looks like they've done some upgrades to the facility and stuff. And they had the infield looked packed, the grandstands looked packed, so that was definitely cool to see. But yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, battle between 2 guys who want to win, and there's, I'm sure for many folks who maybe listened to Denny's podcast this week, I mean, it was obviously a monumental win for him. It was his 7th win at Pocono. It was the 600th win for Toyota in NASCAR, and it was Denny's 50th win of his NASCAR career. So, checked off a lot of proverbial boxes, but definitely, by the way the crowd saluted him post race. Definitely not a lot of happy people there. So, but yeah, I mean, it's just part of the game, and we're going to talk more about Denny and more about the decorum of drivers on and off the racetrack, and in this episode.
Yeah, man. And the reason why I want to kind of talk and dive into some of these things, because it as a fan, I get why fandom booed the crap out of Denny. And I understand, I get it. But if you watch the race play out, NASCAR kind of almost dropped the ball there a little bit with the Chris Buescher thing. Did he get himself started again? Did he? And there's a little bit of gray area there, so I'll leave that to the semantics of Twitter, because there's a lot of that going on right now this week on Twitter. But to me, it kind of played out in a very unique sequence of events. I think, Chris, you can agree with me on that. He didn't wreck Alex Bowman, but he took enough air off of Alex Bowman into that turn 1 and 2, and it gave an arrow push. Now, you pack some air, and Denny is a great packer of air. He knows, he loves it. He's like the modern day Dale Earnhardt when it comes to the air game. He loves that crap. But in the sense with Kyle Larson, did Kyle Larson give him the corner? No. It's down to the wire. I mean, if you can watch that sequence, guys, everyone can watch the replay for themselves. And we all had different interpretations of it. And I understand before going into this saga. let's get that out the way now.
I think me and you are going to differ in this episode. I'm going to sound more probably like a Denny apologist than
than you will. But
well, I already made it clear that I am I call him the resident douche canoe for a reason. So I mean, it is what it is.
One of the I'd say one of the challenges and with I can't even say this car. I mean, it's been a thing in NASCAR for probably the last 2 decades plus. Is aerodynamics plays such a factor with these race cars. Again, I'm not an engineer, but aerodynamics plays such a factor with these race cars now that you're not. And Denny alluded to it. And I'd say one of the things that's, and again, I'm going to sound like a total Denny homer right now, but one of the things that Denny does a really good job on his podcast, Actions Detrimentals, he breaks things down really well to a digestible, where it's digestible for people who don't drive a race car. And he's mentioned, it's very true that at a lot of these racetracks, and for the most part, I mean, pretty much all the way across the board, you're not going to go up and just pass people. Like the days of, say you get a speeding penalty and you go to the back and you got a really good race car, you just can drive up through the field. Like those days are pretty much over because track position plays such a factor now and it's so difficult to pass. And I think it's been exacerbated by the fact of this next gen car because everybody's driving the same stuff. It's the same brakes, the same chassis, the same everything. So, when everybody knows what everyone's doing, if you're not doing it, then, that you'd be at a disadvantage. So I think from perspective of when you look at the Alex Bowman wreck, I mean, even Kyle Larson too, you have one good chance to pass these guys. If a guy makes a mistake or a guy messes up, like you have to pounce on it. There is no, wait till the next corner and give it a try. Like if you don't jump on it, you may not get another chance just because track position and aerodynamics and all that play such a factor.
Well, I mean, here's where I differ for you than you on this one, Chris, is the fact that a lot of what I believe would happen in the Alex Bowman wreck, I'm not sure the exact lap it happened. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was there was some time left in the race. And there, well, I'm not talking about like, hey, wait your turn. No, I'm not talking about that concept. What I'm waiting for is anyone that's driven Pocono on any kind of simulator or any kind of in a race kind of in this format, that is a momentum. The restart, you guys everyone's just pushing each other into turn one. If you watch these restarts, these guys are hauling ass and pushing each other and trying to break loose of each other and then dive into one. So when you watch the Bowman thing, do I think that was an intentional thing? No, I think that was just a racing deal. He drove it in there hard because these guys are getting pushed, and you kind of, you may not drive in there intentionally that hard or that far in, but hell, if a guy's pushing you to do it, you kind of have no choice. And that kind of how that played out there. And then the Kyle Larson thing, the reason why this is even a topic for me is I don't appreciate a driver getting out of the car and bold-faced lying to my lying eyes. My eyes don't lie to me. TV cameras are spread across the track. I get it why Kyle Larson's pissed, if he was pissed. I mean, maybe he's a little cooled off now. It's a Wednesday. But to me, you made contact with me, bud. You dove it in there. You cut me off. You cut my nose off. And you can sit there and tell me you didn't. But you did. And how I knew that you did was you made enough contact to know that your nose, whatever those stupid flaps on the damn nose of the hood of the car, flapped down. So you packed enough air. The reason why you packed enough air there, genius, is you made contact with him. And you made enough contact with him where he lost. And as his mentality states is, I gave him a lane. Give me a break, dude. That's not a lane. You literally were taking that lane regardless if he lifted or not. He did the same exact thing to many drivers. He's done it to Ross Chastain, which, by the way, this is no different than I'm not saying this is the same thing. Ross Chastain and him were like ugly stepbrothers for a long time on the track, and they still probably are. But Kyle Larson, they're not exact. I know they say they're friends, Chris, but like how are you a friend when a guy, if you look at the history of some of these guys, you're going to sit there and tell me that Bowman and Denny, They race each other like ass clowns. And then you got Larson at Las Vegas with him. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities to go through the list of history that
I think
these guys don't race each other like they're buddy. But at that point, Hamlin needs to fess up to it and go, it's for the win. Like, just own up to the fact that you're racing hard and shit happens. Like, don't be like, oh, I didn't touch him. Don't do that.
Yeah,
Don't do that bullshit. That doesn't work.
I think he did that to a certain extent. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, we talk politics on this show a lot. You know, politicians for the most part never say that they did something wrong. Like, you agree, right?
Well, yeah. Let's just remove the fact that if he did admit to actually intentionally doing that, he probably would have gotten him fined from NASCAR.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, let's just take that into consideration too as well. So, like,
you can't admit
that's where I think you cop out and say we're racing hard for the win, right?
Mm-hmm.
But don't bold-faced lie to people and say, "Oh, I didn't touch him." No, man, we're just racing. This is own up to it. Hey, it's a racing incident. We were racing real hard there and won. And I thought I would, let's make up some bullshit. We hear these drivers make up enough bullshit on their interviews to, like, I mean, literally they sound robotic at times. Like, it's like, all right, here's it's like Joe Biden with a cue card of what the hell do I say? Sponsored number. Okay, bullshit. All right, and then go back to the hauler. Like, that's kind of how these drivers are now. They're so robotic. They're afraid to say what they want.
If you're, I mean, let's do this. If you're a team owner, like Tim Wilkins Motorsports, let's say you're a team owner, you have a driver who, for the most part is being paid a lot of money. I mean, Denny is, if not the highest paid driver currently still in the Cup Series.
That's because he's been there in the damn Cup Series so damn long.
if he doesn't make that move and they come off side by side into heading down into turn 2, and eventually Larson's going to clear him because, for the most part, because unless he makes a mistake, because of momentum and having the better line. If you as Tim Wilkins team owner, like what's your thoughts on it?
I would say that as a car owner, I want my driver to be a hard, steadfast race car driver, but at the same time, don't pussyfoot around the media either. If I have a sponsor on that race car that paying a hefty money to win a race, I get that, and I understand. He has some legacy sponsors, by the way, who are the longest tenure sponsors in the sport. FedEx being one of them as a primary sponsor. Obviously, they've changed the number of races over the years, but they're still a primary sponsor of his race car. And I understand that and that mentality. But you can't tell me that Joe Gibbs and him didn't have a meeting and say, really? You didn't touch him? How are you going to get around that one this week? What? Like, and it's like, that's what I would bust his balls about. I wouldn't bust his balls about the race move, because a lot of race car drivers would have done exactly the same thing. I don't hate the race move. What I hate is the response and the reaction all over the radio in NASCAR, like it's some kind of drama WWE fight. I hate that. I'm sorry, but Larson was getting egged on by Cliff Daniels to go do something during caution. Like, I'm sorry, but if you listen to the radio between these guys, why do we want to hype up rate? Don't get yourself penalized for stupidity to cost you a potential championship down the line. Be smart. Go get them back later. And don't say that shit on the radio, because NASCAR is the wiser. So don't say
that's true.
Things. And what are you going to do? Like, you can't say, "Hey man, we're going to talk about that later." Like, you can't say, "Hey, we're going to have to take a look at that and we'll talk about it later." Like, let's let that. I understand everyone's in heat of the moment, but you can't tell me that Cliff Daniels isn't. I'm sorry, dude, but like, he needs to get dragged to the hauler for that bullshit. You can't be doing that kind of crap. Egging your driver on to do stupid things, or Jeff Gordon haul his ass in there to the office. I'm sorry, but I wouldn't want my race team to do that kind of crap. I know you're pissed off. Believe me, I get it. I would be pissed off too. But don't wreck a damn. Don't you dare pull a William Byron and intentionally wreck somebody.
Yeah.
And that's where I get mad, dude. Like, it wasn't the race move, and that's why I think we kind of differ. I would want my race car driver to fearlessly make those kind of moves And he has proven that himself to make those moves and for them to pay off. If the car is handling well, if that's a good, it's kind of a good precursor to that. If the car is handling well and it's not out of shape, he can make that shit stick if he does it. He's a great driver. There's no question about that. It's the getting out of the car and just taking a, I mean, man. And then on the radio, dude, the radio communication in that whole scenario is just downright disrespectful for like a lot of things. And it should have gotten to that. Like that's why I'm angry, because it's one of those things where Kyle Larson, what do you expect him to do? He hits the wall, he runs out of real estate. He's obviously pissed off in that situation. But for his crew chief to basically egg him on to go do something stupid, sorry, man, I wouldn't want my crew chief to do that. I mean, I would want you to, what I want you to do? Do a Cole Trickle and give me a rental car with Rowdy Burns, and we'll figure this shit out. That's what I would want. But that's just
I mean, but I think in a way, Kyle made a calculated business decision. And I could definitely see Denny, if they're in a similar predicament, like, all right, like this guy probably owes me one. Maybe next time we're racing, do I make a business decision and cut him a little bit of a break? Because right now if you look at it from we're not even. They both talk.
The problem is though, is Larson's getting run over by multiple drivers in the sport right now. It's not just Denny doing it. It's like,
but you look at it from the perspective of if you're able to, like in any sport, like when these guys, if you're racing the same guys every single week and you get to know them and you know the way they drive, and you are you can smell weakness. And I think in a way, guys like Denny and Kevin Harvick and Joey Logano and a lot of these guys who have cerebral tendencies, I'll say, like they can smell weakness in a guy. Like let's give no doubt Kyle Larson's probably, if not is probably a generational talent in the sport. I mean, you could probably put him with the likes of AJ Foyt and Mario Andretti and Tony Stewart, of guys who could drive anything. But when it comes down to it, if a guy shows any semblance of weakness, like, okay, hey, I could put this guy in a really bad spot and he's gonna probably lift, I'm gonna keep doing it until he pushes back.
I don't disagree. I just find it disheartening. And as if you gave me the hypothetical as a race car owner, would you want him to race in that style? I think it's not the style. As I said it earlier, it's not the style. It's the actions after the fact. And I think, was it Kim Reynolds that had the interview with Kyle Larson? Is that who had the interview?
You thought the governor of Iowa?
No, not Kim Reynolds. Sorry, dude. Oh man, I'm thinking about politics too much. No, who was the Kim Kuhn was the one. I knew it was somebody. She had the interview with Larson, and she really tried to get some answers out of him, and it was really interesting to hear, because I think we've seen. I mean, I could be wrong, Chris, but the amount of interviews she has done, in like, she's obviously been around the sport a long time. But she's done the interviews like that are like right there in the moment of like the hot in the bottom. Like if you could tell the guy's hot under the collar, he's not cooled down from what has happened. And it's not like an Austin Dillon. I just threw my helmet in a shitty girly way across the track and didn't hit anybody. I just find it funny how he was trying to, like, I mean, what could be wrong, Chris, but like he was trying to deflect. Like he didn't want to deal with it right there, but he knew he has to now. Like he has no choice. These drivers are gonna, like you said, blood in the water. They're gonna make him make a decision one way or the other next week, because they're going where they're going. I believe they're going to Richmond. Is that where they're going, or where are they going?
Yeah, Richmond. Yep. Which Kyle won in the spring, and then Denny won. He won one of the races last year, so I think they're definitely be two of the favorites. So we could see these guys battling for the win on Sunday.
And I believe that track is more of a how well you use your tires and how the car is handling more than a racing line situation or using aerodynamics. Of course, aerodynamics are used in the sport, but Richmond is one of the few tracks, in my view, that the racing line is. It depends. It moves. It goes.
Yeah.
Drivers
definitely
pick it.
control the destiny there more. So no doubt about it.
And it's going to be interesting, man. I think legitimately what happens, what comes of it. Obviously, Hamlin is becoming a reputation, though. Obviously, congratulations on the win. Obviously, surpassing my favorite race car driver in wins at Pocono. He passed Jeff Gordon. I know people are like, well, Jeff Gordon retired, man, like 6 years ago, man. Like, you got to pick another driver to like. I get it. You know how hard it is to find one that you really like in your entire lifetime? There's still people alive to this day that still enjoy Dale Earnhardt, okay? Not junior. I'm talking about senior. So get off my back, people. But I'll find me another race car driver eventually. Maybe it's a Penske guy. Maybe it's a Hendrick guy. Who knows? We'll figure it out. But as a fandom, he won. He won his 50th race win total. And he won his, 500 for Toyota?
600 for Toyota.
600 for Toyota. I think him winning the race for the 600 wins for Toyota is a pretty big deal. Knowing that he now owns a race team, it's a Toyota deal, and the amount of there's obviously a pretty heavy good partnership there. And I don't disagree with anything that he does on the racetrack. What I don't like, and I already specified this why I don't like it. It's don't sugarcoat this. Like, I listen to the podcast, dude, and this is why it hurts me to listen to his podcast. Like you said, he delivers really well when it comes to like the information in a way that's digestible to people. But that delivery is just, ugh. I don't know why. I just can't get across. It just sounds like a complete resident douche canoe. I just can't. I mean, it sounds. You know what it sounds like, dude. And this call to politics is brought to you in part by. This sounds like Ron DeSantis on Adderall. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like a sniffly guy's got some allergies going on, delivery, and I just can't get over that. But that's a personal thing. That's not a professional thing. But by the way, the thoughts of the person that hosts this podcast is his alone. All sponsors involved in this podcast, or theoretically any sponsor that wants to do this, feel free to join the podcast anytime. But
real quick, I know we're getting towards the end here, but one of the things I think we talked about the milestones that have been set. I mean, people have their opinions about Toyota and their involvement in NASCAR, but I mean, the fact that they have won, you figure Toyota joined, the NASCAR's top 3 series, or broke into the truck series in 2004, and they joined the Cup Series in 2007, and for them to rack up 600 wins across all 3 series in less than 20, a little
under 20 years, give or take.
Under 20 years, it's impressive.
It's impressive. I think it is impressive, but you also got to keep in mind too, they have spent a boatload of cash for those 600 wins, my friend. And that's where I don't agree with the business mindset. And that's just me as a race car fan, and it's not a slight on any one thing or any other thing. It's just, for me, Chevrolet with Hendrick and the Fords and the situation that have come through the lineage of the sport, I don't say that Toyota is like, it's whatever. To me, it's another manufacturer in the sport. That's a good thing. They have support through their driver development program, which is great. They've spent a boatload of cash. I mean, they probably spent 3 yachts full of cash on the driver developmental, and have gotten some results, some not so good results, and that's just what you're going to get with driver development type situations.
You also factor in too. I mean, from a sponsorship standpoint, from a branding standpoint,
a lot of money,
advertisement standpoint. I mean, I mean, we make no bones about it when it comes to, General Motors and Ford Motor Company. I mean, they're not
primary sponsor on a race car, dude, on
they're
anything.
not, and then obviously, Dodge has been out of the sport for decades, and the Pontiac brand's been out of NASCAR. Pontiac doesn't even exist anymore. Toyota really has been a big catalyst in really propping up the sport itself, and keeping it where, again, not being Toyota homer over here by any means, but
you can be a homer for whoever you want, man. I don't hate it.
But as the big three here in America have, either, kind of stagnated their spend in motorsports, or have cut back their spend in motorsports, or whatever it might be, whatever level of involvement they have. I mean, Toyota has always been steadfast in their involvement in motorsports. So, I mean, for that, you gotta give them props, especially what they've done in NASCAR. I'm sure everybody would be remiss to say they'd love to see another manufacturer get involved in the sport in the future. But, again, definitely props
I think seriously, another to have that conversation about another manufacturer, that might be another episode worthy of topic. But I think it's one of these things where I think Toyota's legacy in the sport, Chris, is legitimately the driver developmental program. And I think and obviously the truck series really is theirs. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with Thor Sport and others that are not Toyota type teams. Kyle Busch Motorsports is a Toyota based team and things like that. But I think without Toyota in the sport, the truck series probably would have been dead.
Absolutely.
And a lot of these drivers, these younger guys, younger kids, and I call them kids because they're younger than us, but showing us our age here. But they wouldn't maybe have rides to compete at a high level, and competing at a high level is all you ask these guys and the girls to do, and to get their racecraft put together in a logical way where they can compete at the highest level, and that's what you really want. But I think that's Toyota's legacy in the sport. Obviously, the wins are the important thing. Everyone cares about wins and losses. If you're not first, you're last, as they would say. But to me, their legacy is definitely the driver developmental program. We've seen it. I don't have enough fingers and toes to count on how many drivers have come through those ranks and have been at a really high level. I think, in contrast to Toyota, I could be remiss to say that what Junior has done with Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity level, he's done well for Chevrolet in that situation to give those kids a seat to develop, and that's kind of important at the lower ranks of NASCAR. And not to be remiss about being lower ranked, but the Cup level is the Cup level. A lot of people, I think, have some hesitation about Toyota. I do. I'm not a fan of Toyota's. I don't know. Just they don't look, over the years, man. Like if you put Toyota back in like 1980s, what would that car look like? A Ford Pinto? I mean, like I don't know what the car will look like. Because the Toyota Camry's taken on some weird looks over the years. Same thing with Honda. Honda would be nice in the Cup Series to me personally, to see their involvement in that. But I think there needs to be another manufacturer for sure. I think, Chris, we can both agree with that. It would be good for the sport, in my view.
Yeah.
Just kind of not just for the driver standpoint, but just if they're going into this world of everything is pre-built stock cars, they call it, and everything is all parts and OEM parts and things like that, and there's no any of that kind of stuff. To me, it's why can't we get a Dodge? Why can't we get a Honda? Why can't we get a Porsche? Why can't we get anybody? Really? Obviously, everyone goes, "Oh, it's American race cars. Why don't we get an American team?" Dude, there's only so many damn American manufacturers. How do you get a Tesla race car? How's that going to work out for you, bud? But I think that's what Toyota's legacy is, definitely driver development. But I mean, where is it going to go? I'll be interested to see, like you said earlier, with those two race car drivers at Richmond, and I doubt. I doubt Larson's going to get him back right away. It's going to let that one sit. I mean, for the ratings, obviously the NASCAR's like egging them on real hard right now. You can tell that the homers for NASCAR are like, yeah, wreck him now. Yeah, wreck him now. It gets old, man. Like, I don't think it's a smart idea. I just think give those two guys some rental cars like Days of Thunder and let them wreck each other, dude.
Yeah.
That's just
very true, man. Well, we'll see what happens this weekend.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. I appreciate you joining me, dude. I know it's a fun-filled conversation for racing this week. Maybe we'll get into some politics next week. Maybe, hell, we'll go back to racing. Yeah. Maybe, just we're flip-flopping it around because, there's a lot going on in the summer months. The dog days of summer are real, And as much as I like to kick around the politics topic all the time, you got to have to give it a break, and let things just happen, And then when things do happen, which they're bountiful to do, you talk about like the events that happened today. We can wait and talk about that at a later time. And then when we do, it's going to be fun. And so everyone have a good rest of your week. Don't work too hard. Have many cervezas and mucha agua. Eat healthy, sleep well. Have a good week, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you joining me.
Yeah, man. Do it again soon.
Absolutely. See you next week, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Yankee Cowboy Podcast. Feel free to follow us on social media via Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook.